Hello, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce this videotape which is being made mainly for people who work in the Bureau. I think you'll find it interesting for two reasons. The first is the subject. It's about AROS, our new regional computing system for which we've got very high expectations for the next few years. It's already caused quite a lot of interest right through the Bureau, and a prototype is being developed in the Victorian Regional Office. As many of you will already be aware, the main aims of AROS are to streamline communications and data processing, in particular chart plotting, and to provide facilities for the development and the operation of objective forecasting aids and flood forecasting systems, and to look after requirements for regional computing generally. And we've got very high expectations for this project, and it should make a very big impact on Bureau operations in the next few years. The other reason that I think you'll find this tape interesting is one that's very dear to my heart, and that is to take advantage of the tremendous potential of TV for disseminating information, for training, retraining, information on techniques and what's happening in the Bureau generally. And for this reason, we've bought equipment to enable us to make videotapes and to replay them in regional offices and in weather service offices. And a few tapes have already been made here in the training branch and are used in the training courses. But this is the first venture in which we've made one to be played through the Bureau generally. And that's the reason for choosing an interesting subject like AROS. These videotapes won't be quite as professional as 60 minutes, but they will be natural, and in them you might see some people that you know or have heard of, people whose might be just at the moment names on pieces of paper. And this will put, this and subsequent videotapes will put faces to those names, and I hope we'll also have the side benefit of promoting a lot of togetherness in the Bureau. With those few words, I wish all the best to the people who are preparing this videotape, that is the production crew in the training branch and the people in the ADP branch. I wish them all the best in their venture, and I hope that you find this tape interesting and informative. Thank you very much.
It gives me much pleasure to speak to you about AROS, which is certainly a very exciting project and one that will modernise the operations of the regional offices. The major benefits of a national AROS system will be reflected in a rational approach to forecast and warning preparation, with rapid, precise dissemination to a full range of addresses without any manual intervention after message preparation. There will be a huge increase in the capability of preparing forecast aids, which is in stark contrast to the present position, where aids are rarely used because of the excessive time taken to prepare them. There will be more time to consider the forecast being prepared, together with an improved continuity between forecasts and forecasts for adjacent border areas. There will be no restriction to the range of observations that can be plotted and to the number of single parameter charts that can be made available for the forecaster. All plotting will be automated. A very attractive feature of AROS is that there will be less intensive workload during severe weather situations. In general, the benefits that accrue from a national AROS system will be in morale, in an increase in the ability of the forecaster to use his professional training and judgment, in a speedier warning system, especially for aviation, and a substantial increase in the international standing of the Meteorological Service. At this stage, I would like to introduce David Hinksman, who will outline the general features of the equipment, and Margaret Bell, who will demonstrate some of the programs in operation.
A basic requirement of a computer to support the continuous operations in a regional forecasting centre is that the computer system be highly reliable. For this purpose, we have obtained a tandem non-stop system, which is a fault-tolerant computer system. That is, no single module failure will cause the system to stop. The tandem system contains two central processing units linked by duplicated high-speed buses. These CPUs are continually monitoring each other. All the controllers for the peripheral equipment are dual-ported. That is, they are linked to both processors, so that there is always at least one path available to any item of equipment. As well as this, all the critical peripherals, such as printer plotters and disks and visual display units, are duplicated, so that if one fails, another one is available for operation. As well as this, the system itself is backed up by an emergency generator, which will cut in following power failure. And there is battery backup in the central processing units to retain the contents of memory while the switchover is occurring. Each central processing unit has 768,000 bytes of memory, and there are various fault-tolerant features within the central processing unit. For example, failed sections of memory are automatically bypassed by the operating system. Each central processor will recover automatically following failure of power. There is automatic switching to backup paths when a primary path to a peripheral fails, and programs written in non-stop mode automatically continue in the other CPU if the CPU in which it was executing fails. The magnetic tape drive is able to write tapes at 800 and 1600 bits per inch and has a speed of 45 inches per second. There are 3 disk drives, each with a capacity of 64 million bytes, with an average access time of 28 milliseconds and a transfer rate of 1.2 million bytes per second. Of the 3 disks, 2 are run as a mirrored pair. That is, the system automatically writes the same data to both of the disk drives. And if one of the disks fails, then the data is read automatically from the other drive. The 3rd disk is available for storage of less critical data which does not require the backup of a mirrored pair. There are 2 Versatech 11-inch printer plotters. Its resolution is 100 dots per inch in both directions, and it can plot at the rate of 2 inches per second, or when printing 1,000 lines per minute. The Calcop 960 belt bed plotter is a high-throughput drafting type plotter. It is able to plot charts up to 84 centimetres by 152 centimetres. It has 2 pens, allowing it to plot charts in 2 colours. It has a plotting speed of 75 centimetres per second and is able to plot on plain or pre-printed chart backgrounds. Its resolution is about 1/80th of a millimetre. The visual display units are Lear Siegler model ADM42. There will be at least 11 of these in the Regional Forecasting Centre. It displays alphanumeric type data. The screen has a number of pages from 3 to 7. It has a glare filter which greatly reduces any background glare, and in particular even with the floodlights for filming, the glare is minimal. The screen itself can be tilted And the keyboard is removable and adjustable at the operator's convenience. There are adjustments for brightness and for contrast, and there are effectively 32 function keys, which simplifies the entry of a set of commands. There are 2 facet paper tape punchers which are able to punch paper tape at the rate of 75 characters per second. These will be used when it is necessary to disseminate forecasts and warnings over the conventional teleprinter network. There are 4 text instrument serial printers which print at the rate of 150 characters per second and are able to print 132 characters per line. These printers will be used for such activities as archiving the forecasts and warnings, for the hard copy of a forecast on request, as a log device for the communication subsystem, and for any other purpose where a hard copy output is required. There is available on the system a floppy disk drive made by Scientific Microsystems, which can hold up to 315,000 bytes of information per diskette. This can be used to store small quantities of data that may be required in the region. The plan for the communications links is that there will be links to the head office CMSS system, to the Department of Aviation's AFTN system, to Telecom's Telex network via special interfaces, and to the public telegram network. This diagram gives us an overview of the main functions of AROS. We will now look at each of the subsystems in a little more detail. The communications subsystem is responsible for handling messages coming into and going out of the system. It receives observations from various communication lines and passes them into the system for further processing. It also accepts forecasts and warnings that have been generated from the system and passes them out to communications networks. The link to CMSS will be used for receiving observations and for disseminating forecasts and warnings interstate. The link to the AFTN system will be used for receiving aviation-type observations and disseminating aviation forecasts and warnings. The link to Telex will be used for the dissemination of public weather forecasts and warnings. And observations such as rainfall and river heights will be received on the link to the public telegram network, or TRES. The system is under the control of a communicator at a visual display unit, where his responsibilities will include the monitoring of the subsystem and the communication lines, the corrections of some message errors, initiation of retransmissions of messages and similar functions. For incoming messages, the message type is recognised and the messages are stored on a circular message file for up to 6 hours. The observations pass on to the message decoding and validation subsystem, where the decoding of coded messages such as synops, temps, upper winds and shifts, ship messages and so on, takes place. Also, some validation of weather elements occurs, such as that a wind direction is between 0 and 360 degrees, and that dew point temperatures are less than or equal to air temperature. There is a printed error log for messages which are not able to be fully decoded because of coding errors, for messages which fail validation checks, and messages with plain language. The manual re-entry of such messages in error can be performed via VDU if necessary. All messages then pass through the weather alerting subsystem, which will issue an alert for such situations as wind speeds exceeding 20 knots, rainfall exceeding 5 millimetres since the last report, and the arrival of such messages as species and warnings from other officers. The forecaster must cancel the alerts individually to ensure that important alerts are not overlooked. The forecaster can also change alerting limits and can turn off individual alerts. These are reset automatically at the next synoptic hour. The alerting subsystem is also used to advise the forecaster of computer hardware problems such as disk failures. The decoded messages are stored on a disk database by message type, by station of origin and time of observation as appropriate. Also stored on the database are forecasts and warnings from interstate. The messages are generally stored for 48 hours, some for a little longer, the oldest being overwritten by the latest to arrive. Several modes of retrieval of messages from the database are provided as appropriate for the type of message.
This is the observations, display and entry subsystem. Any data received by the RFC from observing or forecasting officers and stored in the AROS database can be displayed on the screen. New data can also be entered into blank proformas, or existing data may be modified. Part 1 of the synop for Laverton is displayed, with the headings displayed in reduced intensity and the data values in normal intensity. Some values are fully decoded and others remain as coded values. To modify data, the cursor is moved to the data item and the new value is entered. This amended message is then stored in the database.
The data display subsystem allows observational data to be extracted from the database and displayed in various ways on request. Observational plots are provided on a variety of charts, mean sea level, upper air and so on.
The range of data displays are listed for selection. If we select plotted charts, the range of charts is displayed, which includes 2 surface charts and several upper level charts. On selecting the Australian region surface chart, the date and time of the chart is entered, and confirmation of this date and time is required. The surface charts are normally produced on a pre-printed map on the Calcom belt bed plotter, but options are available to use plain paper with the plotter drawing the coastline and borders, or to use the 11-inch Versatec printer plotter. Upper charts are normally produced on the Versatec. To produce an F160, the station, date and time are entered, and an option to include the previous trace. The F160 is produced on the Versatec. Bulletins and wind sheets may also be produced on the Versatec in a form ready for photocopying.
A number of forecasting aids are provided, which generally involve computation of indices to assist the forecaster. Regional office staff have developed a forecast guidance system which includes analogue retrieval and fire weather index computation and similar procedures. The flood forecasting subsystem will provide river catchment models developed by hydrologists, which will use rainfall and river height data from the database to predict flooding. The forecast and warnings composition subsystem allows the forecaster to prepare forecasts and warnings on visual display units. The forecasts are then automatically disseminated to preset addresses, or can be disseminated immediately if required. The printer is available for hard copy versions of forecasts on request and automatic archival printing of forecasts once or twice a day.
This is the forecast and warning subsystem, which enables forecasters to prepare the text of forecasts and warnings on the screen of the VDU. These are then transmitted at the scheduled time by the communication subsystem. The forecast and warning composition system holds the schedule of the forecast to be issued for the day. Forecasts are presented to the forecaster in this order, but any forecast may be skipped and a later one prepared. Once a forecaster has selected a forecast to prepare, he can elect to start from a blank pro forma, from a previous issue, or from a partially completed version held in a work file. In this example, a previous issue is being amended. Using the function keys, the cursor is moved around the display to the parts of the text to be changed, and words are altered or deleted or added as required. The parts of the text enclosed in square brackets will not be transmitted. Once the text is completed, it is marked as ready for transmission or held in the work file for further amendment. Warnings are prepared in a similar way when required. A list of all warnings issued in the last 24 hours can be displayed, together with a list of warnings which must be renewed at a later time.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed meeting members of the AROS development team, and the information that they've presented has at least given you some feeling for the scope and potential of the AROS concept. AROS, I believe, is an important new concept for the Bureau. In the short term, it should lead to considerable gains in the efficiency in the way in which we produce forecasts in the Bureau, and by removing some of the more repetitious elements of this process, I believe it should lead to greater job satisfaction for those officers involved. It is the longer-term prospects, however, which I believe will be the most exciting for AROS. As the AROS concept grows, it is envisaged that local regions will acquire a much greater local computing capacity. This in turn will enable regional officers to have access to a much broader spectrum of forecasting aids. Such aids as improved access to satellite images and radar images, advanced diagnostic techniques, local automated methods for forecasting and analysis, improved objective aids. All of these concepts should lead to significant improvements in the forecast process. Finally, may I echo the sentiments expressed by my fellow Deputy Director Bob Crowder in his opening remarks, as I wish the AROS concept every success in the future, and extend my personal thanks to not only the AROS team but also to members of the Victorian Regional Office and the Central Training School for making this video possible.